Seattle rain slicks the alley as Adrian Vale, hoodie over black tee, leaves a demo.
They're coming for us.
The lights die. A masked man lifts a gun. An 11-year-old grabs his hand, whispering, "Don't turn
They're coming
around,
for us.
Just move." Under a dock, she presses a 3D printed white crane, crack on one wing, into his palm. He knows that crack. Elena's. Her eyes. His past. Is this girl his daughter, and can he keep the lights and her safe? Seattle wakes in rain and steel, but Adrian Vale has been awake for hours. He stands in his penthouse kitchen, hoodie sleeves pushed to his forearms, hands wrapped around a mug he will not finish. The window faces Elliott Bay. Ferries glow like moving constellations. He watches the water the way other people watch the news. It steadies him. It reminds him that patterns exist, that currents tell the truth long before headlines do. On the counter, a notebook lies open. He keeps it old school for what matters. Contracts live in the cloud. Regret stays on paper. A sentence at the top of the page is half written, crossed out, written again. "Elena, I do not know where you are." He caps the pen and closes the book. There are parts of his life that obey a clean commit. This is not one of them. Nova Mind hums inside his head even when he is home. Edge nodes in traffic poles. Low-light cameras that do not intrude, just listen. Swarm drones that swim air the way salmon move upstream, turning toward trouble. The platform stitches real-time data until it becomes something useful. A map that warns before a street goes dangerous. A voice that says, "Slow down here, somebody will cross. Build the light 2 blocks earlier. You save a minute and you save a life." He wears the uniform that makes boards nervous and engineers proud. Dark gray cashmere hoodie, black tee, custom-fit jeans, sneakers that do not announce money but tell it to behave. He looks like a runner because he is one. 20 minutes along the waterfront in the cold has solved more for him than a week of slide decks. Sharp hazel eyes behind minimalist glasses. Dark hair that refuses to lie flat. He could bully a room, but he would rather outthink it. On his desk stands a small resin test print, milk-white and imperfect, from an early Nova Mind casing. He keeps it beside the monitor to remind him that good tools start ugly and end true. It is not the thing he wants to see. That thing is in a memory he wishes he had not earned. Years ago, in a cramped apartment with a 3D printer on a borrowed table, he watched an ivory crane grow layer by layer for a woman who believed in him when the power bill did not. The nozzle slipped near the end. A hairline crack traced the right wing. They laughed. He said, "Keep it anyway. It means it was made by human hands." He left not long after. The story he tells himself is practical. Startups drown. He could not afford an anchor. The story he cannot outrun is smaller and sharper. He walked away before he knew whether she carried his child. His phone buzzes. Jules texts from the Pioneer Square site. Street lighting grid is set. Drone swarm is synced. City liaison wants a shorter speech. Adrian replies, "No speech, just lights." Jules adds a selfie of high-vis vests under a dripping awning, then a note. "You sure you want this demo at midnight?" He thumbs back. That is when the city needs it. He jogs the waterfront and lets the rain stitch his thoughts. He does not do performative charity. He does not do hashtags. He likes code because it does not lie. Still, he has learned that data without people turns brittle. Tonight's demo matters because it moves the promise 1 block closer to the folks who live with sirens and shadows, not just talk about them. Back upstairs, he showers, eats half a banana, and opens the notebook again. "Elena, I did not choose you, and I cannot unchoose that. If there is a child, I hope they—" He stops. He will not invent a person to make himself feel better. He writes instead what he can stand behind. "I am sorry. I should have stayed long enough to ask." He tears the page out and folds it once, then slips it into the inner pocket of his hoodie. Not a plan. A confession that might one day have a recipient. At Nova Mind, the team moves like a pit crew. Batteries swapped. Firmware updated. Priya, a retired investigator who consults on city contracts, signs in at the front desk and lifts a brow at his shoes. "You know you're going to meet a council member in that hoodie," she says. "I am meeting a city," he answers, and she lets it go. She trusts outcomes more than optics. It is why he hired her. By 11, the rain has thinned to mist. Pioneer Square waits in brick and shadow and the echo of old rail lines underfoot. The drone cases ride in a van with fogged windows. The team unloads. Adrian walks the block twice, unhurried, noting which lamps hum and which buzz. He has learned to listen before he speaks. He does not know that somewhere in the lattice of alleys and soffits, small hands grip a rusted ladder. That a 12-step path between vents has been memorized by someone who measures safety in seconds, not budgets. He only knows the ache that has lived in his chest for 10 years' shifts, the way tides do when a storm forms beyond the horizon. He cannot name why. He checks his watch, nods to Jules, and looks up. "Bring the city some light," he says, and the team opens the cases. The first drone lifted, blades whispering against Seattle's damp air. Its light cone swept across the brick facades of Pioneer Square, revealing murals, doorways, the shine of rain on cobblestone. A few bystanders gathered near the barricade, filming. Adrian's gaze traced the drone's arc, satisfied, until the grid flickered. One by one, the streetlights blinked out. The square plunged into black. "What the?" Jules shouted over the sudden quiet. A generator thumped, trying to catch. It didn't. From the alley to Adrian's right, a shape moved. Fast, low, deliberate. A man in a gray jacket crouched near the junction box, a coiled fiber trunk snaking from his hands. Sparks flashed. He was ripping the line that fed the network hub. "Hey!" Adrian called, stepping forward. The man froze, the muzzle of a pistol tilted upward from the shadow. Adrian's pulse spiked. He raised his hand slowly. For a beat, all sound collapsed into rain hitting metal. Then, "Don't turn around. Just move." The voice came small but sharp, cutting through the dark like a note of glass. Something tugged at his sleeve, a hand, quick and strong for its size. Before he could react, the figure pulled him backward, down a narrow service stairwell that smelled of rust and steam. "What? Who?" he began. "Quiet," the voice hissed. "He's got a scope." They ducked behind a half-open maintenance door as a red dot glided over the stairwell wall. The beam lingered, then swept away. Footsteps echoed overhead. Adrian's breathing steadied enough to focus on the person crouched beside him. The voice belonged to a girl, 11, maybe 12. She wore a faded bomber jacket patched with duct tape, jeans scuffed to threads, sneakers 2 sizes too large. Strands of hair clung to her cheek, rain dark and wild. She looked up, eyes fierce. "You're welcome," she muttered. "Who are you?" Adrian whispered. "Someone who doesn't want to get shot tonight." Her hand stayed on his wrist, guiding him through a maze of pipes. They climbed down 2 flights. Boots scraping metal, the noise swallowed by steam hissing from a vent. Adrian caught a glimpse of her face, sharp jawline, small cut at the corner of her lip. She moved with purpose, like she knew every bolt and railing in this place. They emerged into an underground corridor lined with cables. The girl darted ahead, ducking beneath a grate, then motioned for him to follow. "Stay low. Don't talk. The cameras above don't reach down here." They crawled under a catwalk and surfaced behind a loading dock. The air smelled of diesel and salt. The hum of the city returned. Distant sirens, the low rumble of buses. Adrian leaned against the wall, breath uneven. "You shouldn't be down here." She shot him a look. "Neither should you, mister." He almost smiled. "Fair point." From her jacket pocket, she pulled something small and white, a 3D printed crane about the size of his palm. One wing had a faint crack along its edge. She pressed it into his hand. "If you get caught," she said, Say you're delivering this to Nova Mind. They'll stall while you run." He turned the crane over under the flickering dock light. The detail, the curvature of the beak, the asymmetry of the fold, the tiny fracture on the right wing, his breath caught. He'd made this once, or one exactly like it, years ago, for Elena. The memory hit hard. The hum of the old printer, her laugh when the nozzle skipped, the way she said it looked fragile but strong. Like us. Adrian stared at the girl. Same angular jaw, same storm-gray eyes that refused to be scared. His pulse stumbled. "Where did you get this?" he asked. She shrugged. "Found it." "Found it where?" She ignored the question, scanning the alley above. "We can't stay. He's not working alone." "What's your name?" "Maya." She said it flat, almost like she regretted it. He pocketed the crane, words caught behind the realization clawing through him. Maya. The name hit a nerve he hadn't touched in years. "Why were you there?" he asked. "I track power drops," she said simply. "That guy, he's been cutting lines in low traffic blocks. Cops don't care, but I do." He blinked. "You're telling me you predicted that?" Her lips curved into something between pride and defiance. "Kinda runs in the family." Before he could ask what she meant, sirens wailed closer. Red and blue lights washed the brick walls. Maya tugged her jacket tighter. "You go up. They'll question you." "Me?" "They'll take me somewhere I don't come back from." Adrian stepped forward. "Wait." But she was already moving, scaling scaffolding like a cat, disappearing into the fog. He called after her, voice low, "Maya!" No answer. Only the rain, falling softer now. He looked down at his palm. The white crane gleamed faintly in the dock light. The tiny crack glinted like a scar that refused to heal. Somewhere deep inside, a truth stirred he wasn't ready to name. She knew the city's veins better than his own engineers. She spoke like Elena once did, headlong, brave, unfiltered. And she carried his past in her pocket. The morning after the blackout, Seattle's skyline looked like a half-finished equation. Beautiful, unsolved, and faintly threatening. Adrian hadn't slept. The 3D printed crane sat beside his coffee cup. Pale against the black marble counter, its tiny crack catching the first light that cut through the blinds. He turned it over again and again, the way a scientist examines evidence he hopes isn't what it seems. Every line, every imperfection, he remembered making it. The same printer, same calibration error. He'd made one for Elena the night before his first investor pitch. "A token of what we'll build," he'd told her. She'd smiled and said, "Then don't forget to build something human too." He had forgotten. The city buzzed with chatter about the outage. News anchors replayed shaky cell phone clips. The blackout, the fleeing silhouettes, the flash of a weapon. Nova Mind's drone test had been trending for all the wrong reasons. Jules texted 3 times before 8 a.m. "You okay?" "Police want a statement." Adrian typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on. Later. "Need to confirm something first." He slid the crane into his hoodie pocket and grabbed his keys. The Nova Mind campus woke early. Rows of developers nursed lattes, eyes locked on code. The office walls pulsed with real-time data, city grids alive with color. Adrian's reflection moved through them like a ghost. He stopped by his glass-walled office and called in Priya Das, his consultant, and the closest thing he had to an internal compass. She'd served 20 years as a city investigator before Nova Mind lured her into the private sector. Sharp mind, sharper tongue. "Long night?" she asked, stepping in with a thermos. "Define long," he said. "Anything ending with your name on a police report?" He ignored the jab and handed her the crane. "You ever seen one of these?" She squinted. 3D print? Cheap resin. Nice work, though. I made it. Years ago." Her brow arched. "You kept a souvenir business?" "No. It belonged to someone I used to know." Priya waited, silent as only detectives can be. He exhaled. "There was a woman, Elena Rivers. We were together before Nova Mind took off. I walked away. I never knew if she had a kid. Priya turned the crane in her hand, noting the crack. And now? And now, an 11-year-old girl just saved my life with this exact model in her pocket. Her eyes sharpened. You think she's yours? I think she might be. Name? Maya. Priya's expression softened for a fraction of a second. Pretty name. Then the professional mask slipped back on. You want me to look into it? Adrian hesitated, guilt rising in his throat. Yes, quietly. I don't want to disrupt anything if I'm wrong. Understood. She tucked the crane into a small evidence bag. I'll start with hospital records, school enrollments, social services. If there's a paper trail, I'll find it. He nodded. Thank you. She paused at the door. Adrian, if the kid is yours, what then? He didn't answer. He didn't have one. By noon, Adrian sat in his car outside Pioneer Square, watching city workers splice new fiber lines where the outage began. The scene looked ordinary now, stripped of the fear that had hung there last night. But his chest still hummed with that moment, the small hand grabbing his, the command to move, the clarity in her voice. He saw her again in flashes, the bomber jacket, the quick eyes, the way she seemed to know the city's blind spots. She wasn't afraid of the dark. She'd learned to live in it. His phone buzzed. Priya again. Got something, she said. Elena Rivers, last known address in Tacoma. Worked hospital janitorial shifts for a few years, then vanished from the payroll. Couple of eviction filings. No recent utility accounts, but I found a custody report. Maya Rivers, age 11, truancy flagged, mother unlocatable. Child Protective Services tried to intervene, but every time they picked her up, she ran. Adrian closed his eyes. Ran where? Back to her mother. Always. He swallowed hard. There's more, isn't there? Priya's tone softened. Shelter camera caught something 2 weeks ago. Woman dropping off a bag near the side entrance. Could be Elena. No solid face ID, but body frame fits. And the girl, she matches Maya's file photo. He stared out of the windshield. A delivery truck rumbled by, shaking the puddles on the pavement. So, she's alive, he murmured. Both of them. For now, Priya said quietly, but if CPS steps in again, they might not stay together. Adrian's jaw clenched. Find out which shelter. Already did. Sending location. That evening, Adrian parked 3 blocks away and walked the rest. The shelter sat under an old bridge, its sign missing letters. A security camera blinked over the door. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed. Volunteers sorted donated clothes. The air smelled faintly of detergent and coffee. He spoke to the front desk worker, a tired man in a knit cap. Looking for a girl named Maya, about 11. Comes here sometimes? The man frowned. You a relative? Adrian hesitated. I'm trying to find her mother. Elena Rivers. Recognition flickered in the man's eyes. Elena drops food off sometimes. Won't come in, though. Kid shows up after school hours, hangs around, helps the younger ones. Quiet kid. Smart. Doesn't trust adults. Adrian nodded slowly. If she comes by again, tell her. Someone she helped last night is looking for her. The man studied him. You one of those Nova Mind guys? Adrian froze. Yeah. She's got one of your old drones. Fixed it herself. The words hit harder than any headline. Outside, the rain returned, fine and steady. He looked up at the bridge lights, at the city that hummed on electricity and code, and realized how little power meant when it couldn't reach the people who needed it most. He pulled the crane from his pocket, thumb brushing the crack in its wing. Elena, he whispered into the night, what did I leave behind? By morning, Seattle's sky turned to dull pewter, the kind that never decided if it was fog or rain. Adrian hadn't gone home. He'd sat in his car outside the shelter until sunrise, watching the slow pulse of a neon sign flicker through the mist. Somewhere out there, an 11-year-old girl was navigating a city that had learned to ignore her. Somewhere, Elena Rivers, his Elena, was still running. He drove aimlessly until Novamind's glass tower appeared in his windshield like a mirror he couldn't avoid. By the time he reached his office, Priya was already waiting, coffee in hand, a look that said she'd been up just as long. "Got an update," she said, closing the door. "You were right. The girl's name is Maya Rivers. CPS records list her as transient. No permanent address, frequent runaways. But here's what's interesting." She slid a photo across his desk. It was grainy, black and white from a traffic camera, a slim figure darting through an intersection. The timestamp, 11:48 p.m., the same time the lights went out in Pioneer Square. "She was there," Priya said. Adrian nodded slowly. "She's not just wandering, she's tracking patterns." Priya arched a brow. "Like father, like daughter?" He didn't answer. His pulse thudded in his ears. She continued. "I dug deeper. The sabotage isn't random. Whoever's cutting those fiber trunks, they're hitting lower-income grids, spots where outages don't make headlines. It's methodical." Adrian leaned forward. "So, Maya was right." "Seems so. And if she's been shadowing those incidents, she's probably seen more than we have." He thought of the small map she'd mentioned, the scuffed phone, the quiet authority in her 11-year-old voice. "Priya," he said carefully, "I need to find her before the city does." She sighed. "You want me to run surveillance data?" "No, that's not how this should start." He hesitated, then added, "If she's mine, she deserves to see a man, not a company logo." That evening, he returned to Pioneer Square. The rain had sharpened into thin needles, slicing through the streetlight haze. He pulled his hood up, walking the same alley where he'd first seen her. The junction box was repaired now, sealed with a city sticker that read, "Property of Seattle, Municipal Services." He crouched near it, tracing the bolts, scanning the angles of visibility. From here, she would have seen everything, the saboteur, the van, the streetlights dimming one by one. A sound behind him, a soft scuff, too light for an adult. He turned, careful, slow. Maya stood half-hidden behind a metal crate, the same bomber jacket clinging damp to her small frame. Her eyes darted toward the street. "You followed me," she said, accusation laced with curiosity. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said. "I came to thank you." She crossed her arms. "You look like someone who doesn't say thank you much." He almost smiled. Maybe not enough. They stood there in the drizzle, the hum of the city swallowing the silence. Finally, he reached into his pocket and held out the crane. "I wanted to return this." She tilted her head. "Why? It's just plastic." "It's more than that," he said softly. "I made one exactly like it. A long time ago." Maya frowned. "You're saying you printed mine?" He shook his head. "No. I printed one for someone I cared about. Someone named Elena Rivers." The name hit her like a spark. Her chin lifted. "You know my mom?" Adrian's heart stumbled. "So, she is your mother." Maya hesitated. Her shoulders squared. That mix of street tough and fragile honesty only kids could carry. She said not to talk to strangers, especially ones who ask about her. "I'm not." He stopped himself. "You're right. You shouldn't trust strangers." Her gaze flicked to the crane, then back to him. "Why do you care?" He drew a slow breath. "Because I think I made the first one. For her, before you were born." She blinked, uncertain whether to believe him. Rain dripped from a ledge above, hitting the pavement like a metronome. Finally, she said, "If you're lying, I'll know." "I believe you would," he said quietly. Maya's shoulders softened a fraction. "You're the guy from Novamind, right? The one the news says almost got shot?" "That's me," she huffed. "Great, now you owe me twice." He smiled. "You're keeping score?" "I always keep score," she said, smirking faintly. Then her tone turned serious. "Look, that guy with the gun, he's part of something bigger. I've seen him hit other sites. Nobody listens to me, so I started tracking him." "You did this alone?" "Yeah. I map where the lights go out and when. I can tell you which blocks will go dark next week." Adrian's mind raced. You're collecting data? Paper maps and markers, she said. Phones die too fast. He exhaled, half in awe, half in fear. You're brilliant, Maya. She shrugged. I'm tired of people saying that and doing nothing. Sirens echoed in the distance. Maya's eyes widened. That's CPS. Someone saw me. I have to go. Adrian stepped forward. Wait. She backed up, clutching the straps of her backpack. Don't try to follow me. Maya, please. But she was already climbing the scaffold, vanishing into the maze of rooftops, leaving only the echo of her sneakers and the wet shimmer of her outline in the rain. He stood alone in the alley, the crane still warm in his palm. He looked up into the gray sky, voice breaking low. Elena, what did I miss? The city answered with thunder. Seattle was a tangle of cloud and glass that day. Soft gray light bleeding into the bay, sirens threading through morning fog. Adrian hadn't stopped moving. He'd been awake for 30 hours, fueled on espresso and guilt. Every block of the city now looked different. Every flickering streetlight, every power line felt like a clue Maya had tried to hand him. Priya called just after 9. You're not going to like what I found. I'm already not liking most things, he said, steering his car through Belltown traffic. Elena Rivers, definitely alive. Payroll records stopped 10 years ago, but she's been moving. Tacoma, Olympia, back to Seattle, night shifts, cash jobs, always within walking distance of a hospital or shelter. Why hospitals? She used to clean them, Priya said. But lately, my bet's she's bringing someone in for care off the books. Maybe Maya. Adrian gripped the steering wheel tighter. You're saying she's hiding from the system. Wouldn't you? He didn't answer. He knew exactly why Elena would run. From him, from attention, from anything that could threaten the small, fragile life she built. Priya continued. Here's the twist. I checked CPS reports. Maya's flagged as potentially truant but non-violent, highly intelligent, self-taught electronics aptitude. The file's full of notes about her fixing things around the shelters. Security lights, broken phones, routers. Adrian felt something twist inside. She's keeping the lights on for other people. That's not the worst of it, Priya said. The saboteur, he's hitting exactly the areas she's been trying to protect. Whoever's behind this knows the same grid she's been mapping. So she's a kid caught between two systems that don't see her, Adrian muttered. Exactly, Priya replied. And now that the police think Novamind's demo was targeted, they're combing every blackout for suspects. If Maya's anywhere near those sites, she's in danger. Adrian pulled into the Novamind parking structure, engine idling. Find out where she might go next. Use the city's outage predictions. Cross-reference with her last locations. Priya hesitated. You sure this isn't about more than data? He looked out through the windshield, rain streaking down like veins. If she's my daughter, I owe her more than an apology. By nightfall, he was back at Novamind's downtown command room. The city grid glowed across 12 panoramic screens, a live pulse of light and data. Engineers tapped quietly at terminals. Every district was marked by lines of blue, except for one blinking red quadrant near the docks. Pier 17's fiber relay is fluctuating again, Jules said, scrolling through the log. We thought it was fixed last week. Adrian's gaze narrowed. That's one of Maya's tracked zones. Who's Maya? Jules asked. Never mind, just send a field drone. Within seconds, a small drone left its bay, darting into the night rain through a high vent. Its live feed appeared on the screen, a wavering view of empty streets, graffiti, puddles reflecting amber light. Then, movement. A girl's silhouette crossed the camera, small, fast, familiar. Maya, Adrian breathed. She was kneeling by a junction box, pulling something from her backpack, a wrench, duct tape, wires. Not sabotage, repair. She's trying to fix it, he whispered. Jules frowned. You know her? Adrian ignored him. He grabbed his coat and ran. By the time he reached Pier 17, the wind had turned vicious. slapping the harbor with the sheets of rain. He spotted her instantly, knees bent, jacket soaked, hair plastered to her face. She didn't notice him until his flashlight beam hit the ground beside her. Maya flinched, shielding her eyes. "Don't come closer!" "It's me," Adrian said, lowering the light. "I saw the feed." She scowled. "You sent those drones? Creepy. I was making sure you were safe. I don't need a babysitter." She returned to the panel, tightening a bolt. "City workers never finish the job. I'm just keeping the lights alive." He crouched beside her. "That's dangerous work, Maya." She shot him a glare. "Dangerous is walking home in the dark." He wanted to argue, but the conviction in her voice silenced him. She reminded him so much of Elena. Defiant, brave, unwilling to yield to fear. "Who taught you to do all this?" he asked. "My mom." "And YouTube," she said with a shrug. "We used to fix things for extra money, before she got sick." The words hit him like a jolt. "Sick? What kind of sick?" Maya hesitated, tightening another screw. "Doesn't matter. She's strong." "Where is she now?" Her jaw clenched. "Don't know." "Maya." "I said I don't know," she snapped, eyes wet but unbroken. He backed off, voice soft. "Okay. They worked in silence, the hum of the repaired line slowly rising like a heartbeat. When the lights above them flickered back to life, Maya sat back on her heels, a small smile breaking through. "See? Not all heroes wear badges." Adrian chuckled quietly. "Some wear duct tape." She grinned, then caught herself, schooling her face back to seriousness. "You shouldn't be here. The people cutting these lines, they don't like witnesses. I'm not leaving you out here alone." She shook her head. "You don't get it. If you get caught with me, you'll ruin your life. But me? Mine's already complicated." He wanted to tell her the truth, that her life was his life too, that she wasn't alone anymore. But he wasn't ready to speak it, not without proof, not without Elena. Maya stood, rain dripping from her sleeves. "Thanks for the flashlight, mister, but I work better solo." He reached into his pocket, held out the crane again. "Then take this, for luck." She glanced at it, then shook her head. "No, you keep it. You'll need it more." And with that, she disappeared into the storm, swallowed by the noise of the harbor and the city that still didn't know her name. Adrian watched until she vanished completely, his voice barely a whisper against the wind. You shouldn't have to fix the world alone. The next morning, Seattle shimmered in that soft gray light that only comes after a storm. Puddles reflected half-built clouds, and the air smelled of wet concrete and ocean brine. Adrian sat in his kitchen, elbows on the counter, staring at the little white crane lying beside his phone. The wing crack caught the sun just enough to glint like a heartbeat. Priya's voice came through his Bluetooth speaker. "I have something for you. You might want to sit down." "I already am," he muttered, rubbing his temples. "What did you find?" "The clinic report. Free Community Medical Center off 4th Avenue. Elena Rivers visited 2 months ago. Minor respiratory infection, low-income patient, refused follow-up. But guess who else came in last week with a cut hand?" His stomach dropped. Maya. Exactly. Refused treatment until every other kid got seen first. Sound familiar? He exhaled. "Every bit of it." Priya continued. "Here's the part that matters. The nurse who bandaged her kept the swab they used to clean her cut. It's still in cold storage. If you want confirmation, paternity, this is the window." For a moment the world went silent except for the slow hum of his refrigerator. He could almost hear the years between now and that night with Elena. The argument, the slammed door, the promise he never made because he was too proud. "Do it," he said finally. "You're sure?" "Run the test. Quietly." "Got it. I'll need your sample." He looked at the crane again, his reflection bending in its surface. "You'll have it by noon." By midday, he was at the lab, NovaMind contracted for R&D bioverification. Ironic that the same place ensuring AI security was now holding his DNA. He watched the technician seal the swabs, label the tubes, and place them in a rack. "How long?" he asked. "Standard process. 12 hours, maybe less. We'll message you." 12 hours. He could build a drone prototype in that time, rewire a street grid. But waiting for a truth that could rewrite his life, no algorithm could compress that. The hours stretched. He walked the waterfront until dusk, shoes splashing through puddles, replaying every word Elena had ever said that hinted at love, at disappointment, at the possibility of a child she might have hidden. He remembered her voice the last night they spoke, soft, shaking, angry. "You build systems for everyone but yourself, Adrian. One day, you'll regret not staying long enough to see what could have grown." Now, he knew exactly what that meant. At dawn, his phone buzzed. Lab result, ready, verified identity link, 99.9999% paternal match. He froze, staring at the message until the letters blurred. Then he whispered into the stillness, "She's mine." He sat down heavily on the couch, elbows on knees, the crane still in his pocket. His voice came out raw. "I left the right life for the wrong reasons." The truth felt both unbearable and sacred. A piece of him had been walking the streets of Seattle for 11 years, surviving without him, fixing the world he broke. By mid-morning, Priya arrived unannounced, trench coat dripping on his hardwood floor. "I assume you saw the message." He nodded. "It's real." She softened, folding her arms. "So, what's your move?" He gave a hollow laugh. "That's the problem. I have no idea. She's a child who doesn't need a millionaire walking in and claiming her life like a patent." "You could start by being human," Priya said quietly. He looked up. "And if Elena hates me for showing up? Then you take it. You've got 11 years of silence to earn back." Her tone wasn't cruel. It was honest. The kind of honesty that steadied him more than comfort ever could. That evening, Adrian sat in his workshop, the same space where he'd once built the prototype that launched Nova Mind. But instead of monitors, the bench was scattered with the things Maya might understand. Old wires, circuit boards, half-assembled drones, tools he hadn't touched in years. He tried to imagine her here. Small hands soldering, brow furrowed in concentration. He pulled a notebook from the shelf, the one with the half-written letter to Elena, and added a line beneath the torn edge. "I met her. She doesn't know, but she's brilliant and stubborn and alive in ways I forgot how to be." He closed the book and set it beside the crane. Together, they looked like proof of something unfinished, but finally real. At midnight, he stepped out onto his balcony. The city was alive again, streetlights steady, traffic flowing, the waterfront glowing like circuitry. He thought of Maya's words at the pier. "Not all heroes wear badges." He wanted to see her again, not to explain, not yet, just to make sure she was safe. He texted Priya. "Find where she goes next. Don't alert CPS. I'll handle it." Her reply came quick. "Understood. But remember, you can't fix this with money or code. You'll have to show up." He typed back, "That's the plan." Then he pocketed the crane, pressed it tight against his chest, and whispered into the rain, "Hold on, Maya. This time, I'm not running." Seattle's rain felt heavier that week, like it had weight beyond water. Adrian ran the waterfront at 4 a.m., hoodie soaked through, lungs burning. Each stride was a silent confession. He had built systems to predict everything except the cost of leaving. Now, he couldn't stop imagining Maya reading headlines. Nova Mind, CEO, claims daughter like acquisition. That image haunted him. Back at his penthouse, the city still asleep below, he opened his notebook and wrote half a sentence. "Elena, I'm trying not to fail her the way I failed you." He stopped, drew a line through it, shut the book. The crane sat on the counter, cracked wing catching dawn light. He pressed his thumb to it like a promise. At Nova Mind, the tension had shifted. Engineers whispered about the blackout. Jules eyed him, cautious. Priya kept glancing at her phone. Everyone could tell something was pulling their CEO somewhere else. During a strategy call, a board member asked about the press storm around the outage. "We're being painted as reckless," the man said. "You need to reassure investors." Adrian's gaze drifted to the window, where a seagull hovered, its wings tilting into the wind. "I'm not going to issue a statement until I know the facts," he said. "We're not running spin on safety." When the call ended, Priya lingered. "You're writing letters you'll never send," she said softly. He gave a small, tired smile. "How can you tell?" "Your eyes," she said. "I spent 20 years watching people who regretted not acting. Same look." He leaned against the desk. "If I show up now, I'm afraid Elena will slam the door. And Maya, she's already learned not to trust adults." Priya shrugged. "Then don't show up as a CEO. Show up as a man who's been wrong and wants to make it right." He looked down at the crane in his palm. "I've optimized everything but the human heart," he murmured. That evening, he found himself outside a closed makerspace in the International District. Priya had traced Maya's phone pings there. Late nights, no membership card, but the cameras showed her face pressed against the glass, watching 3D printers she couldn't afford to use. Tonight, she was there again. Forehead against the window, breath fogging the pane. Adrian stepped from the shadows. "I can get you in," he said quietly. She spun around, wary. "You again?" "I'm not here to hurt you." He held up a small access card. "I rent a bench inside. Thought you might want to work without rain." She eyed him, torn between suspicion and longing. "Why would you do that?" "Because I know what it's like to build in the dark," he said simply. Something flickered in her eyes. After a moment, she gave a tiny nod. "Fine." But no weird questions. Inside, the makerspace smelled of solder and sawdust. Rows of 3D printers whirred softly, laying down bright filaments. Maya's face lit up at the sound. He handed her a soldering iron. "What are you working on?" She pulled a frayed charging cable from her pocket. "Need this for my maps. Phone keeps dying." They stood side by side. Heat from the iron warming their hands. She fixed the cable with steady fingers. He pretended not to notice the way her tongue poked at the corner of her mouth, the same habit Elena had when concentrating. When she finished, he handed her a scrap drone body. "Ever rebuilt one of these?" Her eyes widened. "That's a Nova Mind prototype." "An old one. Think you can bring it back to life?" "Watch me," she said, grinning despite herself. They worked until the printers slowed. At last, she set the drone on the bench, proud. "It's ugly, but it flies." "Ugly is how good things start," he said softly. She glanced at him sideways. "You sound like my mom." He swallowed. "She taught you well." Maya set down her tools. "If you're going to help, here are the rules. Keep the lights on in my block. No press, no surprise gifts. And you have to show up yourself, not send some assistant." He nodded, almost relieved. "I can do that." Her gaze sharpened. "Promise?" "I promise." A long silence settled between them. The printers whirred like distant rain. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked finally. He met her eyes. "Because someone once helped me, and I never forgot. Now it's my turn." Maya studied him, expression unreadable. Then she reached for her backpack. "Okay, we'll see." She slung it over her shoulder and started for the door. "Same time tomorrow?" He nodded. "I'll be here." She paused at the threshold. "Don't make me regret this." "I won't," he said, and meant it. When she left, he stayed by the bench, the crane still in his pocket, his hands shaking not from solder fumes, but from the fragile, enormous thing taking root inside him. Hope. The next evening, the rain softened to mist, wrapping Seattle in its familiar hush. The makerspace lights glowed like an aquarium in the dark. Machines humming, air warm with plastic and promise. Adrian arrived early, sweeping metal filings off the bench before Maya showed. He hadn't felt this nervous since his first investor pitch, but this time there was no boardroom to impress. Just an 11-year-old who reminded him of everything he'd lost. She appeared right on time, bomber jacket zipped to her chin, damp sneakers squeaking on the floor. "You clean up for everyone, or just me?" she teased. "Only the important people," he said, smiling faintly. She grinned back before quickly burying it under her usual mask of indifference. "You brought parts?" He slid a small box toward her. Batteries, wiring, sensors scavenged from obsolete drones. "Enough to build something useful." Her eyes gleamed. "You mean something ours?" He nodded. "You tell me what you need. I'll follow." That phrase hung in the air, heavier than he meant it to. They spent the next few hours soldering, testing, coding. Maya's focus was surgical, her hands quick and confident. She barely spoke unless it mattered. "No, that line's redundant," she murmured. "You're looping twice." He raised an eyebrow. "Remind me to hire you." "You couldn't afford me," she shot back. Adrian laughed, startled by the sound of his own joy. When she leaned over the monitor, hair falling into her face, he caught the faint scent of rain and dust. The same smell Elena used to carry after long nights cleaning the clinic. The memory hit like static. He pushed it aside. "So, Maya," he asked carefully, "why do you do all this? Fix lights? Track outages?" Her tone shifted, quieter. "Because when the lights go out, bad things happen. Mom says people disappear easier in the dark." He froze. "She's right." Maya nodded. "There was this lady from our block. She tripped on a busted signal crossing the street. Broke her leg. Cops didn't even file it. Mom fixed that light herself the next night. Said if no one else will care, we have to." Adrian stared at her, this small, fierce girl carrying the weight of a city. "You're extraordinary," he said softly. She looked down. "I'm just tired of losing people." He wanted to reach out, tell her she wasn't alone anymore, but he held back. She wasn't ready, and neither was he. They worked in silence until the hum of printers filled the room again. Finally, she sat back, wiping her hands on her jeans. "You really meant it, about following my rules?" "I did." "Good," she said, "because tomorrow I need you to keep a promise." He frowned. "Which one?" "The one about showing up. There's a blackout risk near Yesler Terrace. City won't send anyone. We'll fix it." He hesitated. "That's a dangerous area after dark." She smirked. "Guess that's why you're coming." He wanted to protest, but then he saw her expression, that stubborn bravery so much like Elena's, and he simply nodded. "I'll be there." The next night, they met by a shuttered corner store. Streetlights buzzed overhead, some flickering, some dead. Maya unfolded a paper map, lines drawn in a red marker. "This block loses power every other week," she said. "People get mugged here. I can fix the circuit if you lift me up." He crouched beside the pole, bracing her as she climbed. "You've done this before?" "Twice. Once with Mom. Once alone." Her voice caught on the last word. He steadied the ladder. "I've got you." She tightened a screw, sparks popping. "Okay, power reroute, 3, 2, 1. The lamp above them flickered, then bloomed to life, washing the alley in gold. Maya grinned down. "Told you." He smiled up at her, pride swelling in his chest. "Remind me never to doubt you again." She hopped down lightly. "You really shouldn't." For a moment they just stood there in the glow, two silhouettes framed in light. A stranger and a girl connected by something neither dared name yet. Then Maya reached into her backpack and pulled out something wrapped in an old cloth. "You should probably see this," she said. Inside was another crane. Same model, same fragile curves, but older. One wing cracked, filled with a dab of glue. Adrian froze. "Mom said if I ever met a man carrying its twin," Maya whispered, "I should run. Or, listen." He stared at her, heart pounding. "And tonight?" She looked straight into his eyes. "I'm listening." He swallowed hard, voice trembling. "That crane. It was the first thing I ever made for your mother." Maya studied him for a long, silent moment. Then she folded the cloth back around the crane and tucked it away. "She said you used to be good before the world got louder than your heart." The words hit like a prayer he didn't deserve. "Maya." he said softly. Your mom. Where is she now? Her eyes glistened, but she shook her head. Not ready yet. He nodded, accepting it. Then I'll wait. As they walked away, the lamplight stretched their shadows across the wet pavement, one tall, one small, both carrying the same fragile promise between them. The morning came gray and breathless, the kind of Seattle day that looked like it was holding its breath before the next storm. Nova Mine's glass tower shimmered above the waterfront, but inside the air felt heavier than ever. Adrian sat at the long conference table, the cracked white crane resting in front of him like a confession he couldn't hide. Across from him, the board murmured in low tones. Their eyes carried that quiet blend of admiration and fear, the look reserved for visionaries who'd just stepped off the map. Finally, someone said it out loud. Adrian, this photo, this leak, it's everywhere. He turned the tablet around. A still image filled the screen. Him and Maya at the Yesler Terrace lamppost, her face half-lit, smiling faintly up at him as he held the ladder. The headline read, Nova Mind CEO employs child to test dangerous equipment. PR, nightmare, or hoax. Jules shifted uneasily. The city council's calling for an ethics review. Investors are spooked. We need distance, fast. Priya, sitting near the end, said nothing at first. She just watched Adrian, reading him like a code she already understood. He leaned back in his chair, voice calm but steady. That photo doesn't show a test subject. It shows a kid helping me fix a problem we created. You can't say that publicly. Another board member cut in. You'll admit liability. Adrian met his gaze. Liability for what? For standing next to a child who's been fixing the streets we ignore? Silence spread across the table. Priya finally spoke. They're not asking for the truth, Adrian. They're asking for protection. He looked down at the crane, fingers tracing the tiny fracture along its wing. His pulse steadied. Maybe it's time the truth is the protection. Jules frowned. Meaning what? Adrian stood. Meaning I'm not stepping back. Not from her, not from this. The words came out low, unwavering. You can't seriously. She's my daughter, he said. The room froze. Even the HVAC hum seemed to stop. One of the board members whispered, Your what? My daughter, Adrian repeated. Her name is Maya Rivers, and whether the world knows it or not, she's the reason Nova Mind exists. Every streetlight we build, every algorithm we run, it's for people like her. Jules exhaled slowly. Adrian, you understand what you're risking. Your company, your reputation. Then let them go, Adrian said quietly. If they're built on silence, they're not worth keeping. That afternoon, the headlines detonated. Nova Mind CEO confirms paternity of homeless child caught in viral photo. Comment sections flooded. Admiration, outrage, disbelief. Some called him a hero. Others, a manipulator. Maya saw it all from a library computer terminal. Her hands clenched the keyboard as she scrolled through strangers debating whether she was real. When Adrian called, she didn't answer. When he texted, I want to explain in person, she left it unread. He waited outside the shelter until dusk. Every sound made him look up. The slam of a dumpster, the rumble of a bus. A sneaker scuff on wet concrete. Finally, she appeared, hood up, face hidden, backpack slung low. Maya, he said softly, please. She didn't stop walking. You told them. Everyone knows now. I didn't plan for it to happen that way. She turned on him, voice breaking. You said no press. You promised. He swallowed hard. I broke that promise, yes. But I had to tell them the truth. The truth? She snapped. You think the truth helps me? Now they'll chase me, follow me, take pictures like I'm some project you found on the street. Her eyes shimmered with angry tears. You don't get to fix me with headlines. He took a step closer, rain dripping from his hood. I'm not trying to fix you, Maya. I'm trying to stand beside you. She looked away, trembling. Too late. People like you always come when it's already too late." He didn't argue, he just said, "You're right." That stopped her. He continued, voice rough. "I wasn't there when you needed me. I wasn't there when your mother got sick or when you started carrying this city on your shoulders, but I'm here now, and I'm not leaving." Maya's jaw tightened. "You say that like it's easy." "It's not," he said, "but easy never built anything worth keeping." For a moment, neither spoke. Then she reached into her backpack, pulled out the older crane, and shoved it against his chest. She said, "If the world ever found out about me, I'd have to disappear again. You ruined that." "Maya, don't call me that," she said, voice cracking. "Not until you earn it." And then she turned and ran into the rain, vanishing between the rows of parked cars. Priya found him an hour later, standing alone under the dripping awning of the shelter, the crane clutched in his hand. "You told them," she said quietly. "I had to. She's not going to see it that way." "I know." His voice trembled now. "But hiding her was killing both of us." Priya's eyes softened. "What now?" He looked out at the empty street, rain reflecting neon light. "Now I show her what truth looks like when you don't run from it." He turned, walking toward his car, the little cracked crane still glowing faintly in his palm like a compass guiding him through the dark. For 3 days, Maya vanished. No texts, no sightings at shelters, no blips from the old phone Priya had tried to trace. Adrian barely slept. The city kept moving, traffic, ferries, investors, but inside him, everything had gone still. He worked through nights at Novamind, running models he didn't need to run, rewriting code that didn't need fixing, anything to keep from staring at the empty chair across the table. The little white crane sat beside his keyboard. Every time he reached for his coffee, he saw the crack in its wing and thought of her. Small, fierce, defiant. On the 3rd morning, his intercom buzzed. "Sir, there's a girl downstairs asking for you," the receptionist said. "She doesn't have an appointment, says it's urgent." He was already moving before she finished. Maya stood in the lobby like she didn't belong to gravity. Small, tense, ready to bolt. Her bomber jacket was damp, her backpack frayed. But her chin was up, her eyes steady. When she saw him, she didn't smile. "You made me famous," she said flatly. "I made a mistake," he answered. "I should have asked before speaking." "You think?" she said, crossing her arms. He nodded. "You're right to be angry. You trusted me, and I broke that." Her eyes flicked to the glass walls around them, where reporters still lingered outside, flashes catching on the rain. "They keep calling me your daughter," she said quietly. "You don't even know what my favorite food is." Adrian swallowed. "Then tell me." She blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "Tell me. Start with that." Her expression flickered, somewhere between disbelief and confusion. "It's mac and cheese, the kind with the crusty top. My mom used to make it when we had extra money." He nodded. "Got it. Mac and cheese with a crusty top." "Don't pretend you care about that," she muttered. "I care about anything that keeps you standing," he said softly. "And for the record, I burn the crust every time." That almost drew a laugh out of her, but she bit it back. He gestured toward the elevator. "Come upstairs. No cameras, no people. Just talk." She hesitated, then followed. His office was stripped of grandeur. No skyline backdrop today, just blinds drawn, one light on. On the desk, 2 cranes sat side by side, hers and his. Maya noticed immediately. "You kept it?" "Of course." She sat, arms folded. "So what now? You adopt me? Send me to some fancy school? Pretend this is a happy ending?" "No," he said. "No pretending. I can't undo 11 years. But I can listen. I can show up." She studied him, skeptical. "Everyone says that. Then they leave." He nodded slowly. "Then let me be the first who doesn't." She looked down, fingers tracing the edge of the table. "Mom said you were smart. Said your brain worked like a city map. But she also said your heart got lost somewhere." The words stung, but he didn't flinch. She wasn't wrong. Maya glanced up. "Why'd you leave her?" He took a long breath. Because I was young and arrogant, because I thought building something big would fix the hole in me, and because I didn't know she was pregnant. Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. She said you walked out before she could tell you. He nodded, and I've regretted it every day since. She was silent for a long moment. Then she reached into her backpack and pulled out a small paper notebook, creased, water-stained. Mom wrote things down sometimes, she said, voice soft. She kept this after she got sick, said I could read it when I was ready. Adrian froze. She's sick? Maya bit her lip, then nodded. She didn't want anyone to know, said hospitals cost too much. She just keeps working. He exhaled, pain tightening his throat. Where is she now? I don't know. Last I saw her, she left me at the shelter 2 weeks ago and said she'd come back. She didn't. He clenched his fists, struggling to breathe evenly. Then we'll find her, together. Maya's eyes widened. Together? I won't send anyone. No cameras. Just us. She studied him for a long time, her face flickering through disbelief, anger, and something quieter. Hope. Faint, but visible. Finally, she whispered, You really mean that? I do. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was fragile, new, like 2 broken circuits finally sparking again. Maya looked down at the cranes side by side. She always said they were a pair, she murmured. Said one belonged to the man who built things and one to the girl who'd finish what he started. Adrian's voice caught. Then we'll finish it together. She nodded once, carefully, like she was testing whether the ground beneath her would hold. Then, almost too quietly, she said, "'Kay, Pops." The word was soft, barely formed, but it cracked something open inside him. He didn't move. He just let the sound hang there, fragile, enormous, unearned, and promised himself he would never let it be broken again. That night, the 2 of them stood by the window, watching the city's lights pulse through the rain. Adrian rested a hand on her shoulder. See that district over there? He said. That's where we start. We'll fix it for real this time. Maya nodded. Together? He smiled. Together. Outside, lightning flared against the clouds, and for the first time in 11 years, he didn't flinch. He just stood there, the storm reflected in his eyes, his daughter beside him, and the broken crane between them finally meaning what it always should have. Something mended, something found. The storm cleared by dawn, leaving Seattle rinsed and trembling under soft gray light. The headlines hadn't cooled overnight. Nova Mines feeds were flooded with speculation, and investors demanded answers. But Adrian didn't flinch. He'd spent the night on his office couch while Maya slept curled up in his hoodie, her small frame breathing steadily beneath the glow of the city she'd spent years protecting alone. When she woke, he was already on the phone with Priya. "We're finding Elena today," he said quietly. "I've got leads," Priya replied. Tacoma Hospitals. A night shift cleaner using a fake last name, Rivera, close enough to hide in plain sight. But she's been missing 2 weeks. Last payroll record was cash. "Keep digging," he said. "If we can't find her, we'll ask Maya to trace her last drop-off route. She'll know what to look for." Maya stirred, rubbing her eyes. "You're talking about Mom?" Adrian nodded gently. "We're going to find her, sweetheart." The word, sweetheart, caught him off guard. It had slipped out, natural and uncalculated. But Maya didn't push it away this time. She just nodded, still groggy, and said, "She used to take buses between hospitals. If she was working nights, she'd nap on Route 50 or the shelters near the port." "Then that's where we'll start," he said. Hours later, the 2 of them stood beneath a bus stop canopy off Jackson Street. Maya held a folded city map marked with red lines. The rain had eased to a mist, the air sharp with salt and diesel. She liked this route, Maya murmured, said the water made her feel clean again. Adrian's throat tightened. "She sounds like someone who never stopped moving." "She didn't," Maya said. "Even when she got sick, she said stopping felt like dying." He crouched beside her. "Then we'll move until we find her." Back at Nova Mind, Priya burst into the control room mid-afternoon, her trench coat soaked, tablet in hand. "We found something." Adrian and Maya followed her to the main screen. A security still appeared, grainy, time-stamped 2 nights ago. Elena, thinner than he remembered but unmistakably her, stood near a clinic entrance holding a small duffel bag. She was handing a box to a nurse, then walking out of frame. Priya zoomed in. The box was labeled Pocket Beacon Prototype, the emergency mesh node Maya had once described in her drawings. Adrian blinked. "She finished it." Maya whispered, "She said she wanted to build something that outlived her." He turned to Priya. "Where was this footage?" "Community clinic on Rainier Avenue, 2 blocks from a condemned apartment." Maya grabbed her jacket. "That's where we used to live." Adrian looked at her. "Let's go." The building sagged like a tired skeleton. Windows boarded, walls streaked with graffiti. Maya led the way, flashlight steady, the beam cutting through dust. On the top floor they found her mother's old room, mattress on the floor, a folded blanket, an empty bottle of cough medicine. On the table sat another crane. Not plastic this time. Paper, delicate, folded from a page torn out of a maintenance log. Adrian unfolded it carefully. Inside, Elena's handwriting read, "If you're reading this, you found what matters. I couldn't keep the light on forever, but she can." Maya pressed her hands to her face, trembling. She knew she was leaving. Adrian wrapped an arm around her. "We'll find her, Maya. This doesn't end in goodbye." She nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. "Then we have to move, fast." Back at Nova Mind, chaos had erupted. Priya met them in the elevator, voice tense. "We've got a bigger problem. A competing firm, Arctech, just leaked internal city documents. They're accusing Nova Mind of staging blackouts to secure funding. They're tying you and Maya to the sabotage." Adrian's jaw clenched. "They're lying." "I know, but the optics are bad. Media's swarming. Council wants a hearing. They're calling it the streetlights scandal." Maya's voice cracked. "They're blaming us? After everything we fixed?" He looked at her steady. "Then we'll show them what fixing really looks like." That night, under flickering emergency lights, Adrian called an emergency press briefing. Maya stood just off stage, arms crossed, the 2 cranes tucked in her jacket pocket. When the cameras started rolling, Adrian faced them head-on. "You've seen the headlines," he began. "You've read the stories about manipulation, data breaches, exploitation. You've heard that Nova Mind used an unverified child informant. Her name is Maya. She's not a liability. She's my daughter." Gasps rippled through the crowd. He continued, calm but fierce. "You call this a scandal? I call it the reason I built this company, to protect the people the system forgets. The night she saved my life, I realized our technology meant nothing if it couldn't keep her safe. So here's the truth. I'm not stepping down. I'm stepping forward." Flashes exploded. Reporters shouted. Behind him, Maya gripped the 2 cranes, heart pounding. The fear she'd carried for years, of being unseen, unwanted, melted into something else. Pride. After the conference, she approached him quietly, her voice trembling but steady. "You didn't have to do that." He smiled. "I did, because you deserve to be seen." She took a shaky breath, then looked him in the eye. "Then let's show them what we can build," and he nodded. Together. Outside, the city hummed again. From the waterfront to the hills, streetlights blinked alive one by one, brighter, steadier, as if the city itself had decided to believe them. "People are going to come after us," Maya said quietly. "Let them," Adrian said. "You can't break something that was built to heal." For the first time in years, he felt something clean move through him. Not relief, not victory, just love, quiet, earned, and real. Morning broke clear and cold over Seattle, the kind of morning that made the skyline look almost new. But the headlines were relentless. Nova Mind, CEO's Confession. Rocks Tech Industry. Every outlet had the same photo. Adrian at the podium, Maya half hidden in the wings, clutching her mother's cranes. Inside Novamind's atrium, employees whispered. Some were inspired. Others were afraid. But for the first time in years, Adrian didn't care about optics. He cared about impact. Priya walked beside him as they crossed the lobby. "You just detonated a decade of PR strategy," she said dryly. "I replaced it with truth," he answered. She smiled faintly. "Truth doesn't trend as fast as outrage." "Then we'll make it last longer." At noon, he called a press conference, not to defend himself, but to pivot the conversation. The room was packed. City council members, reporters, engineers, even rival CEOs drawn by curiosity. Maya stood backstage again, her hand tucked around both cranes. Adrian faced the cameras. "When the lights go out in this city," he began, "crime rises. Accidents rise. Fear rises. We all know this. But the solution isn't more press releases or blame. It's infrastructure that doesn't discriminate between neighborhoods." He paused, scanning the room. "So, today, I'm announcing the Streetlight Covenant, a public-private initiative to harden infrastructure where outages hurt people the most. Novamind will pledge $25 million. But that's not the real innovation. The real change is that we're open-sourcing our safety stack, every line of code that predicts and prevents harm in urban grids." Reporters erupted in murmurs. Someone shouted, "You're giving away your patents?" "Yes," Adrian said firmly, "because you shouldn't be able to own safety. If another company can make the system better, let them. Our goal isn't profit. It's light." He clicked the remote. Behind him, slides lit up showing city data correlations, maps where lighting outages overlapped with spikes in assault, pedestrian injuries, and delayed emergency responses. "In neighborhoods that lose power for more than 2 hours," he continued, "violent incidents rise up to 10%. Pedestrian injuries increase by 14%. You want to know what happens when the lights stay on? Hope happens." There was silence. Then, scattered applause. Maya watched from backstage, her throat tight. For years, she'd been patching wires in the dark, unseen. Now, the man she'd distrusted was using the full weight of his empire to say what she had been trying to prove alone. When the conference ended, Priya joined him outside. "That was brave," she said, "and reckless. You've just declared war on half your investors." Adrian smiled faintly. "Then I'll rebuild with the other half." She studied him, impressed. "You've changed." He glanced toward the skyline where the sun broke through thin clouds. "No, I finally remembered who I was supposed to be." Maya approached slowly, hood down, face flushed from nerves. "You didn't tell me you were going to do that." "I didn't want to make you a target again," he said softly. "I was already one." He met her eyes. "Not anymore." She hesitated, then asked, "You really gave away all the code?" "Every line." She smiled faintly. "Mom would have liked that." He looked at her carefully. "Maya, we're going to find her. We know the route she took, the clinics she visited. She can't be far." Maya nodded, though her voice wavered. "I hope she wants to be found." "She will," he said. "She built a world around light. She just needs to see it shining again." That night, Adrian worked in his lab long after everyone had left. The cranes sat beside a prototype on his desk, a small, matchbox-sized node built from scavenged parts. The pocket beacon, they'd called it in the earliest concept notes. He soldered until his hands ached, refining the design from memory and from Maya's drawings. When it was done, he set it gently in her hands. "This is the start," he said. Maya studied it, then smiled. "We'll need hundreds. We'll build thousands." She turned the little device over in her palm, the LEDs glowing faintly. "It's small," she said, "but it could save someone." "That's the point," he replied. "Big ideas always start small." She nodded, her smile trembling between pride and tears. "You sound like her." He looked away. "I hope I'll get to tell her that myself." Later, as the city quieted, Maya dozed on the couch while Adrian stood by the window, looking out at the skyline. He could see the soft shimmer of streetlights stretching into the distance, their light no longer just data points but proof that compassion could be engineered. Priya's voice echoed in his head. "You can't fix this with money. You'll have to show up." He touched the crane in his pocket. "I'm here," he whispered. Behind him, Maya stirred. "You said something?" He turned and smiled. "Just making sure the lights stay on." "Good," she mumbled, half asleep. "We still have work to do." He chuckled quietly. "Yes, we do." And as the rain returned, tapping gently on the windows, Adrian realized that for the first time in years he wasn't building systems to fill the silence. He was building a life that could finally hold it. A week later, the rain eased into sunlight that felt like forgiveness. Seattle woke to headlines that finally carried hope instead of scandal. Streetlight Covenant gains. City approval. Nova Mine's plan to light forgotten streets begins. For once, people weren't arguing in comment sections. They were volunteering. Adrian read the stories from his office window. Maya perched cross-legged on the couch behind him, scribbling in her notebook. Every so often she'd mutter, "No, that won't work," or, "Maybe if we adjust the pulse delay," like she was talking to herself and the city. Priya stepped in, holding 2 paper cups. Cappuccino for the girl genius, black for the boss who looks like he hasn't slept in 3 days. Maya grinned. "You're my favorite adult." Priya smirked. High praise from a child who runs Seattle's power map. Adrian smiled, watching the exchange with quiet pride. He hadn't realized how much laughter could soften a room until now. Priya turned serious. "There's something else. We found her." The air shifted. Maya froze mid-scribble. "Mom?" Priya nodded. "She's in Tacoma. Small community clinic near the shipyards. Admitted 2 nights ago with pneumonia. She's stable." Maya's pencil fell from her hand. "We have to go." Adrian was already grabbing his keys. The drive south was silent but charged. The road unfurled in the gray ribbons past damp evergreens. Maya clutched both cranes in her lap, fingers worrying the edges. "She's really okay?" she asked finally. Priya glanced from the passenger seat. "She's weak, but yes. The clinic staff said she kept asking if the lights in Seattle were back on." Maya smiled faintly. "That sounds like her." Adrian kept his eyes on the road. "She never stopped believing, did she?" "No," Maya said softly, "even when everything went dark." The clinic was small, just a handful of rooms painted in faded blue. The air smelled of antiseptic and salt. A nurse led them down a narrow hallway. "She's in room 3, the nurse whispered. "She's been asking for Amaya since dawn." Maya hesitated at the door, fear and relief warring in her eyes. "What if she's mad I found you?" Adrian knelt beside her. "Then she's human, but I think she'll just be glad you're safe." Maya nodded, took a deep breath, and pushed open the door. Elena Rivers lay in the bed, thinner than he remembered, her hair streaked with gray, skin pale, but eyes, those same eyes, still burning with quiet fire. When she saw Maya, her face broke open with light. "Maya," she whispered, voice rough with disbelief. "Baby, you found me." Maya ran to her, the crane slipping from her fingers. "You promised you'd come back." "I was trying to," Elena said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't want you to see me like this." Adrian stood frozen in the doorway. Elena's gaze lifted, and for the first time in a decade their eyes met. "Adrian," she breathed. "You shouldn't be here." He stepped closer. "I should have been here all along." Silence filled the room, heavy and electric. Elena looked at Maya, then back at him. "You know?" "I know," he said. "And I'm sorry. For leaving. For everything I missed." Her lips trembled. "Sorry doesn't change the years." "No," he said quietly. "But maybe it can change the ones left." Lena looked away, tears catching the light. "She's all I had." "She's all I have too," he said. "But I'm not here to take her. I'm here to earn my place. Maya clutched her mother's hand. Mom, he's different now. Elena's eyes softened. Is he? Maya nodded. He listens. A small laugh escaped Elena, fragile but real. Then that's new. Adrian smiled faintly. It is. He reached into his coat pocket and placed the plastic crane on her bedside table, its cracked wing glinting under the sterile light. Elena stared at it, then slowly reached for her purse beside the bed. From it, she pulled the paper crane, the one folded from the maintenance log, and set it beside his. They were always meant to find each other, she said. Maya pressed their hands together. So are we. The three of them sat in quiet, the hum of the clinic machines filling the silence where words weren't enough. Later that night, as they stepped outside, the wind carried the faint echo of church bells from somewhere in the harbor. Maya walked ahead, the cranes cradled in her palms. Elena leaned on Adrian's arm, breathing carefully. You really built all that? She asked softly. Nova Mind? The lights? Everything? He nodded. But none of it mattered until now. She smiled, faint but warm. You always were better at fixing cities than people. Trying to change that, he said. Good, she whispered. Start with us. He looked at her, humbled. If you'll let me. She squeezed his hand once, firm. Show up, Adrian. That's all she's ever needed. He nodded, eyes bright. And you? Elena smiled. I'll believe it when I see it. That night, back in Seattle, he stood on the balcony with Maya beside him. The skyline shimmered with 1,000 steady lights, no longer blinking out like before. She's coming home soon, he said. Maya leaned on the railing. Feels weird calling any place home. He looked down at her, his voice soft but sure. Then we'll build one. You, me, and her. Brick by brick, light by light. Maya smiled, eyes shining with something he hadn't seen in them before. Peace. And somewhere in the city below, one more light flickered back to life. 2 months later, Seattle's skyline glowed steady as a heartbeat. The streetlight covenant had spread across the city. Poles retrofitted, sensors calibrated, and community volunteers installing the small mesh nodes designed from Maya's and Elena's old sketches. For once, the news wasn't about scandal or sabotage. It was about light and the people who brought it back. Nova Mind had changed too. The walls no longer flashed stock prices or investor dashboards. Instead, they streamed neighborhood maps where new pocket beacons were blinking online, each one representing a block that no longer went dark. On one wall, under the company's logo, hung 2 white cranes framed side by side, one resin, one paper. Adrian stood in front of them that morning, sleeves rolled, hair wind-tossed from the balcony outside. He still wore his hoodie over a crisp black t-shirt. The CEO, who once commanded boardrooms, now looked more like a teacher waiting for class to start. Ready? Maya asked, stepping beside him. She was taller now, or maybe it was just confidence. Her bomber jacket had been replaced with a Nova Mind hoodie of her own. Sleeves smeared with solder and pencil marks. He smiled. You sure you want to run the demo yourself? Her grin was quick and certain. It's my code, too. He nodded. Then go for it. Downstairs, the media and the city officials gathered inside the refurbished Nova Mind Community Lab. The space buzzed with kids soldering circuit boards, university students analyzing code, and technicians guiding volunteers through the installation of pocket beacons. Elena sat near the front, pale but healthier, her breathing slow but steady. She'd moved to a small apartment overlooking the waterfront, working part-time at the clinic that once saved her. Every morning she still folded a paper crane and left it on her windowsill. Maya stood on stage beside Adrian, her voice trembling just enough to make her real. We built this so no kid has to walk home afraid of the dark, she said. Every beacon connects to the others, like neighbors holding hands. She pressed a button on the controller. Across the room, a model of the city grid lit up. hundreds of tiny LED nodes blooming from the harbor to the hills. The audience gasped as the lights cascaded in ripples of soft white, like dawn rolling through a miniature Seattle. Adrian stepped forward, his voice calm, proud. Every pocket beacon you just saw can be built by hand. No patent, no gatekeeping. Every child, every volunteer, every engineer can make one, and when the power fails, the light stays. He looked toward Elena and Maya. Because hope shouldn't depend on a company. It should depend on each other. The room erupted in applause. After the event, reporters swarmed, but Adrian waved them off. Instead, he walked Elena and Maya to the waterfront where the city stretched out before them, streetlights shining like constellations stitched to earth. Elena leaned on the railing, the wind tugging her hair. "You did it," she said softly. "You, not we." The humility in her voice pierced him. He shook his head. "No, we did. You started this. You kept fixing what everyone else ignored." She smiled faintly. "And you finally learned to stay." He met her eyes, steady and certain. "I'm not going anywhere again." Maya stood between them, the two cranes cupped in her hands. "Mom, Dad, we should put them somewhere they can see the light." Elena looked surprised at the word "Dad," but she didn't correct it. She just nodded. "Yes, we should." Together they walked to a small sculpture garden near the pier. Maya knelt beside a bronze plaque honoring community innovation and placed the cranes side by side. The resin glowed faintly under the setting sun. The paper fluttered in the breeze, its folds catching the golden light. Elena rested a hand on Maya's shoulder. "You kept your promise." Maya looked up. "Which one?" "To keep the lights on." Weeks later, the Pocket Beacon network spread beyond Seattle. Portland, Denver, even small towns that had read the story and wanted in. Adrian refused every offer to monetize it. Instead, he created the Community Lab Fellowship, hiring young inventors like Maya to design new solutions for overlooked neighborhoods. One evening, after the day's work, Adrian and Maya stood on the balcony watching the glow over the bay. Maya pointed toward the distant skyline. "You see that one light that's a little brighter than the rest?" He followed her finger and nodded. "That's the first beacon we built together," she said. "It's still running." He smiled, quietly awed. "Then I guess we did something right." She grinned. "You mean I did something right?" He laughed. "Fair point." She leaned against his arm. "You know, you still owe me mac and cheese with a crusty top." He looked at her, warmth filling his chest. "Tomorrow night. I'll even burn the crust on purpose." She laughed, the sound light and unguarded, echoing across the balcony and out into the glowing city. Later, when the sky deepened to indigo, Adrian sat at his desk alone. The cranes were gone from the shelf now, resting permanently at the pier, but their imprint remained, a clean rectangle of dust and sunlight. He opened his old notebook, the one that had followed him through every chapter of guilt and invention. On the last blank page, he wrote, "For Elena, who built what I broke. For Maya, who carried light through the dark. And for the city that taught me you can't code redemption. You have to live it." He closed the notebook, placed his hand over the cover, and whispered to the quiet, "I'm here." Outside, the city answered. Not with words, but with light, spilling steady and whole across the bay, where a father, a mother, and a daughter had finally turned the dark into something they could call home. End.